Hello and welcome to today's franchise interview. My name is Nick Strong and I'll be your host for the duration of this interview. I'm delighted to say that my special guest is Clive Smith, who is our specialist consultant that works with franchise business owners that are coming into franchising and helps developing franchisors really make the most of building a strong and effective franchise in those early days of going from 1 to 5 to 10 to 15 to 20 franchisees. Obviously, times of challenge and learning, and Clive can bring a great deal of value through mentoring you through that process. So we're going to be focusing on that, how to structure a franchise to maximize growth, and in particular looking at the mentoring services that Franchise Intelligence provides. So welcome, Clive. Can you give us an introduction to yourself and your history in franchising?
Yeah, hello Nick. Great to be here. I've spent probably almost all of my career in franchising, working with a variety of different franchise businesses, developing them and managing them. Turned some businesses around. I've converted a business from being a company-owned operation into a franchise. So a lot of experience, and currently, for the last 3 or 4 years, you and I have been working together, really helping businesses to get into franchising, helping them understand what it's all about and how it should be applied, and what it could mean for their business, taking them on the journey of putting all the infrastructure in place, and then helping them build their network. And we have a number of our clients now who we've helped go through or help them on that journey, who we still work with because, as Nick said, we're very actively involved in mentoring them and helping them just make sure that they're doing everything that they need to do in order to ensure that their franchise network prospers, develops, and delivers what they want it to.
So for any franchisor watching this and thinking, I've started franchising, I've been through that initial process, and it's tougher than I thought I could do with that mentoring support. What's the best way to reach out to make contact with yourself for that initial deliberation and discussion?
Yeah, well, best way is to drop me an email. clive@franchiseintelligence.co.uk. You can also contact us via our website, which is www.franchiseintelligence.co.uk.
Fantastic. Okay, so let's just examine some of the areas in developing a new and growing franchise, and look at what insight we can share and what value we can add. So thinking about the points of growth, what are the points of growth and pain in building a franchise?
Okay, well, Franchise Intelligence, we sit down with clients and really try to just steer them through not just the early development, but the ongoing development. One of the key components of a good franchise system will be that it has been properly piloted. That it's all well and good. I've seen lots and lots of really great businesses that are run in a particular way. Great owner who's got lots of ambition, lots of enthusiasm. He's ideal for franchising. The business can be franchised. You can replicate it. But we can't just assume that that business in its state that it's in could be immediately built as a franchise network. There is an important stage of going through or called piloting, whereby we've got to effectively construct the franchise in a controlled environment and use that to really sense check all of the thought that's gone into building the network or building the model, and also not only are we testing that the model that and all the presumptions we've made in the model are accurate and sound and that the business is going to work for a franchisee, we also test how the franchisor will get along with managing an independent unit trading under the corporate banner. And so it's as much a test of the ownership and a test for the future direction of the business as a franchise, as much as the sort of testing the structure of the franchise itself.
Okay, so once let's say a franchisor has started, they've started trading, and they're starting to get their first franchisees. You know, they've run a pilot there, and they've got, you know, they've got maybe they've got their first one, and that was tough, and now they've got started there, and they're getting to start. They're starting to get into that managing of those people that are replicating their systems. What might they need to look out for? What support might they benefit from?
Okay, well, the first franchise is always going to be the toughest, because franchisees are not particularly entrepreneurial. They're not great risk takers, actually, because, you know, otherwise they would go off and do their own thing. So they seek the reassurance of when they sit down in front of you and say, I want to buy your franchise, or I'm interested in buying your franchise. They seek some reassurance, and that reassurance will be largely gained from knowing that there's a whole network of other people out there who are doing it and doing it successfully. So the first one's always a bit of a struggle if you haven't got any, because that first franchisee, even if you've piloted, will be a bit of a voyage of faith for them. So getting your first one up and running, that can take time. You've got to get it right. If you don't get it right, you know, it can set you back a long way, actually, because the first one, the first two, the first three franchises will actually help you sell the franchise moving forward. Their experience will be very, very critical, because, as I said, future prospective franchisees will want to talk to those particular the first few, the pioneers, if you like, to really make sure that all the stuff you've been telling them as you've been talking to them about buying the franchise actually is, you know, yeah, it's true. You know, it is a very successful business, and yeah, these guys are great, and I'm enjoying life. That's what you want them to hear. So there is a tendency for any franchisor to really over-regulate a little bit with their first few franchisees. You have to make them, or you want to make them, uber successful. Once, if you can do that, then going from say 3 or 4 franchisees up to 10, 12, 15, it can be an easier path to tread. And there is a little bit of a snowballing effect, particularly if your business is a little bit cutting edge, it's in maybe a new sector, or your franchises there are not many other franchise models in that market sector. You can get some good pace to your franchise growth. Where a lot of franchisors struggle then is going from, you know, beyond around about 14, 15 franchisees. And because what happens then is that the support model can start to creak. As you go through the process of putting a franchisee on franchisee on franchisee on, you've got to think about how your own your support team is keeping pace with this, because franchisees, particularly new franchisees by definition, will be quite demanding. You know, they will suck you dry of information, and you know, you've got to make sure you can afford them the time that they require in order to keep developing their business. Once you start, you know, if you take your eye off the ball and don't give them that accessibility, then you start getting, you know, a few problems. You know, franchisees start feeling a little bit unloved, a little bit uncertain, and you know, doubt starts creeping in. So you really got to be on your game in terms of making sure that your support is in place. And I think, you know, once you get to say 15, usually, I mean, an owner, a typical owner with his current support team might be able to manage that up to 15. But beyond that, you've got to start really backfilling. You've got to start putting some additional resource, additional expertise into your business, so that you can then kick on to the, you know, beyond 15 up to your 20, 25, 30 franchisees.
Okay, well, obviously, if someone's been running a successful business for a period of years, and then they go into developing a franchise, in one way they're exiting out of that business, and they're learning how to build a brand new business, and one which they may have not actually had much experience of in the past, and that is building a network and helping them trade effectively through their business. So this is where a mentor, a support guide can be really important to those people. And obviously, that's a service that we provide, that you provide to your clients. Can you tell us why it's useful for a growing franchisor to have a mentor, and how exactly you provide that service for your clients?
Yeah, it's a good point, Nick. Usually, the businesses that are new into franchising will be businesses that have been very, very closely run by the original founder or the original team, and it's a discussion I always have with a client when I'm talking to them about what franchising means to the business, what the implications of franchising is, to explain to them that their role as the owner or the management team is likely to change. It probably should change. Because whereas, up to press, they may have been running their quick service restaurant very successfully, with their hands on, every lever that goes on in the business, and, they know it inside out, which is why they can franchise, because they can pass on all that information, all that experience and knowledge to prospective franchisees. They might not be, they probably won't be able to afford to keep performing that role, because now they become facilitators. They themselves become mentors and guiders, and sort of guiders for their franchisees. As I said, franchisee will demand attention. They will demand your time, particularly in the early stages. You have to give it to them. It's in your interest to give it to them. But if you are not accessible for whatever reason, that is going to cause problems. I had a discussion with a client quite about a year ago, and this was a daycare nursery business. And what became clear was that the owner was actually quite entrepreneurial himself, and he had a number of different business interests, some of which were overseas. And I did have to say to we delayed the franchising launch for this particular business, because it was clear to me that the owner would not be as available as he needed to be in order to provide the the due care and attention that was going to be necessary to move the business forward. Now, if you've got a large management team, maybe in that case you might be able to afford to delegate responsibility just for the franchise development to one of your team, and I've seen that happen in much larger businesses. But as I said, traditionally it will be the owner who's hands-on, and he's got to think about, well, moving forward. And usually, interestingly, that is the thing that is quite exciting. That's what the owner wants. They've got to a point where they've maxed out, really. They know they've got to expand. They've got to take on a different role. Life will change, and that's what they're seeking. But it's important, and I always do this, is to really spell out the implications and make sure that there is no issue with this, that they are going to make sure that the right level of support is available to their franchisees. So now it's a given, therefore, that in virtually all cases, the owner of that business, when he starts to franchise it, will be new to franchising. And therefore there are lots of things that he may not be sufficiently clued up about or familiar with, that we can help him with, because we've done it. We've spent a number of years doing it. There's not much that you, I, and the rest of our team have not confronted in managing franchisees. So to go back to your original question, why should they use a mentor? It is for the very good reason that mentoring will help you make sure you kind of get it right, and you in the same way that you've passed on experience to your franchisees, we can pass on some of our experience and knowledge to help you do the job you're supposed to do as a franchisor.
Excellent. Yeah. So it's awful feeling a sense of isolation, and many business owners know that. And if they've stepped out of what they're familiar with and supported in, it's very profitable to have that support available to you. So, so you mentioned about having a team in place. Some businesses may have a team that they can allocate to franchising, but many will have a small core business and they'll need to consider bringing on key staff as the franchise grows. So thinking about recruitment and support staff, at what point should the new franchisor take on staff into their business?
Well, you could argue that almost from the from the get-go, there's some value in in making sure that you've put adequate resource in place to allow you to do probably the job you're going to do, which is to be out and about and advising your franchisees. But there's always administration. You may need to supplement your marketing team because marketing support is always one of the things that franchisees are seeking help with. You may need to bolster your training resource and facilities. It's rare that a franchise. I mean, you can go through the piloting stage. You might be able to go through the first 2 or 3 franchisees by sort of managing it almost yourself. And to a point, there is some owners kind of look for the owner, the chap they've been speaking to, the principal of the business, to sort of be at the forefront of giving them advice and guidance, because as far as they're concerned, well, that's what they're buying is that person and all the experience that person offers. Mm-hmm. But there are common ratios that we look at in terms of providing support based on the number of franchisees you've got in the business and the sort of business that you operate, and we provide within our planning process. We try. Well, we do sort of wind the clock forward and give a very good insight into what sort of support structure will be needed once you get to various stages in the growth of your franchise network.
Okay, great. So thinking now about common errors that people might fall into, just because something's new means that you're more likely to make an error. What are the most common errors that new franchisors are likely to make, and how can these be avoided?
Well, the best thing will always be to use a consultant to make sure you don't make those errors. I'm bound to say that, aren't I? But it's true. The whole purpose of what we do, as I've said on a number of occasions, is not to it's to help companies do the right thing, go through the right process. There's no mystique to this, but it's making sure it's done properly. And so one of the mistakes that I've seen made is insufficient piloting. Not allowing the pilot enough time to really demonstrate the efficacy of the franchise model. That is so important in terms of providing a reliable evidence base that you can then use when you're talking to prospective franchisees. Mm-hmm. Bear in mind that when you sell a franchise, it is an investment. It is absolutely imperative that in explaining how the franchise model works, there is no exaggeration. There is nothing that's misleading in the information that you give. And so it's absolutely critical that there is an evidence base that can validate all of the information that you supply to prospective franchisees. So not piloting certainly is one issue, or not piloting sufficiently would be one mistake. I think the second most common mistake is being too cavalier or not precise enough in selecting franchisees. There is a phrase I use, or is used within the industry really, which is that you do not sell franchises, you grant the right to individuals to operate your business. Okay, and it's really important that any franchisor understands that. This means having a very clear profile of the sort of person that you want to represent your brand as a franchisee. You need to be absolutely clear about the background, the experience that you want with your franchisees. And you also need to really, really carefully think about the character traits, the attitude, the personality, the people skills, how much commercial acumen really will be needed. And through the process of meeting with franchisees, you need a system that teases as much of that information out as possible in as scientific a way as possible. Because when you franchise, you sign, you will ask people to sign a franchise agreement that will last usually for up to 5 years, sometimes 10, sometimes 20 years. That's a long time to have a business arrangement with somebody, particularly a long time if that somebody isn't really up to running a franchise. Now, the temptation, particularly in the early stages, and it's a difficult one, when you've invested in building your franchise model, you're running advertising to promote the franchise opportunity, you're getting inquiries in, and you want to get a return on that investment as quickly as possible. So hey ho, someone's sitting down in front of you, waxing lyrical about what a fantastic business this is and how they really want to, they want the franchise, and they're waving the checkbook, metaphorically speaking. And it's difficult. You think, well, hey, this guy wants it, and he seems like a reasonable chap, and he wants to give me some money. He wants to buy it. Well, that might be the right decision. I think every franchisor probably over the years has got experience of being tempted by that situation. But I would just always exercise caution and go through a scientific, methodical process to really get to a point where you can say, I know you want my franchise, but in actual fact, really, I don't think you're actually the sort of person that would succeed with our franchise. You've got to be open and honest with people. Find the right people, and life will be a lot easier as a franchisor once you've got the right people running your franchise. So that's a big issue. And I think the last mistake I would that comes up, and it refers to the point we were talking about earlier, is not being accessible, thinking you can keep all the plates spinning. I'll continue to do what I'm doing in my day job, and I'll try and give some support to the franchisees in addition to that. It very rarely works. It might work for a small amount of time, but you're going to get stretched, and you're going to end up falling between two stools, and it's not the thing to do. So accessibility and devoting the time that's needed to help your franchisees, particularly those early ones, is very, very important.
Okay, so that's clear. And in terms of finding those franchisees, now you might have a network of people you're already associated with, and they may invest into your franchise, but normally it will cost you time, it will cost you money to generate those inquiries. So what are your thoughts on generating inquiries? What are the costs around recruitment, and how can that cost be covered by the franchisor?
Okay, well, one of our areas of expertise, franchise intelligence, is around recruitment. We have some clients for whom we just work with them on recruitment activity. And that can be across the whole spectrum of marketing the franchise opportunity, and then processing inquiries in as effective a way as possible. The latest, or I think the latest surveys that have been conducted into the franchising sector have found that on average it is costing something in the region of £7,500 to £8,000 per franchisee recruited, which is quite a lot of money. Now that looks at all franchises, from the very high value retail, fast food chains, through to the small sort of mum and pop type businesses. So that may not be a figure that applies to every franchise. And in fact, as you know, we've got some of our clients who are spending a significantly lower amount than that to recruit their franchisees. So as with any marketing exercise, it's about planning and as being as creative as possible in the recruitment approach. There are some common channels that all franchisors will use to promote their franchise opportunity. So web portals like our one, Select Your Franchise, being a good example. We've got some print media that are used, which can be quite effective as part of the medium, part of the mix. And then you have the franchise exhibitions. But what is happening is been in recent, I think, years, or certainly months, in many respects, is how social media is now being very effectively used to improve the cost efficiency of a recruitment campaign. We've done that quite effectively, and I've got a couple of clients who have actually really just focused on social media and have done pretty damn well at a very, very low cost. So there's no silver bullet to this. What I would say is that you cannot afford to be look, you've got to have a budget, and it's got to be a sensible budget. But you can't be penny wise with this. You've got to recognise that if you're gonna franchise, you've got to put the investment in place. It's got to be a realistic investment to really get some traction and make some sales. We advise on exactly how that budget should be, what it should be, and how it should be most effectively spent.
Okay, great. Well, that's useful. Now, obviously, there's a process to manage in finding and selecting the right franchisees, and there may be some useful mentoring that's required for that, because obviously, it's not just running a franchise network that's going to be new to a emerging and growing franchisor, but that finding and selection process isn't necessarily intuitive. So, what support services, mentoring services do you provide for your clients in that area of sifting and selection?
Yeah, well, the franchise intelligence approach, it covers all aspects of how franchisees should be recruited, and helps our clients to adopt a process that is as effective as possible. It starts with making sure we've got all of the right components in place to share information with candidates. So we will do the media plan, we'll place advertising, we will get the inquiries. Once we've got inquiries, we've got to we've got to treat them very, very effectively. They're gold dust, getting a good franchise inquiry. So we have a CRM program that helps manage franchise inquiries in a very systematic and a very effective manner. So we don't lose any opportunity. Once we've got that inquiry, then we go through a process of engagement. How do we get what we want? We want to meet with them. We want to talk to them. And so usually that is done through an initial discovery meeting. Some franchisors, if they've got volumes of inquiries, will run that as a discovery day and have a group meeting. But usually, these are maybe one-on-one discovery sessions where we'll invite the candidate in, and that needs to be structured. It needs to be a two-way process. I was talking earlier about selecting the right person. When you come in for a discovery day, it is a discovery for both parties. It is all about not them finding out about the franchise. We want to find out a lot of information about them. So we need to make sure that the questioning process is done in the right manner. We structure that. We put all the presentation material together. We will create a very important document called a franchise information memorandum, which is effectively a disclosure document. In this country, we self-regulate. There is no rule that says we have to have disclosure in the way that exists in parts of North America, Australia. But it is good practice, and I always insist that my clients, that we prepare for them or with them a franchise information memorandum, which is a full declaration of all the key facts about this franchise opportunity, so that there is no ambiguity, there is nothing that they don't understand about what will be involved in buying a franchise. And then we have once we've had the discovery day, and hopefully you've had a constructive meeting and we share with them information, we then go through, if you like, the next stage, which is really due diligence. It's an expectation that the candidate themselves will start to do their own homework, ask questions, We might share further information with them, like a copy of the draft franchise agreement. We might start then talking to them about helping them build a business plan and giving them information to help them do that. And so it becomes a little journey, and it is as much about understanding what the candidate is doing to help us understand whether they're the right people to become business partners or not. But we get to a point where maybe a decision can be made, and then once a decision is made, there are some key steps that we have to go through, which we structure for the candidate in terms of taking that the prospect from the point where they've made a decision to a point where they've signed a franchise agreement and are all lined up to come in for training.
Okay, great. Well, that's really thorough, really helpful stuff. So, and I think we should just finally round off again by saying, anyone that's growing their franchise business that is thinking, look, this is really helpful. This is helping me gain insight, and I would like to have that kind of support, that mentorship, and they want to reach out to engage with you, Clive. What's the best way of doing that?
Yeah, drop me an email, clive@franchiseintelligence.co.uk. Happy to have an exploratory chat on the phone, or if needs be, we can get together over a coffee, whatever works for you. Happy to have a chat, exploratory chat, and then we can put together a proposal as to how we can best help and add value to your business.
Fantastic. All right, well, that's brilliant. Well, that brings us to the end of the interview. Thank you, Clive. Thank you for watching, and we look forward to hearing from you. Thanks so much, and have a great day.
Thank you.